Thank you very much indeed. As this is a fundraiser for the lifeboats, I thought I would start off by telling you about my experience of lifeboats. I've had the privilege, if that's the right word, of being rescued twice by lifeboats, and I'm very much in favour of them, as I might not be here if it wasn't for them. The first one was in Dunmore East, many, many years ago. A friend of mine was looking after a rather pretty little varnished yacht, which was moored just off Dunmore East. There'd been a storm, and there was a bit of a sea running, not too bad, as the storm had settled down. Myself and him went down to the quay just to have a look-see if all the boats were okay. And it was just beginning to get dark, and everything looked fine. And just as we were turning to go away, we saw the boat he was looking after was moving. It was obviously broken its mooring while we were standing there watching it. So there was a little plastic punt on the slip. We rushed to it, and we commandeered it and rowed out to the boat. We got on board and did our best to start the engine, but it would fire and then fail. So we drifted towards some rocks, and I was able to put the punt between us and the rock and keep the boat afloat. And we wondered what was going to happen. Some other people had seen what was happening, and a short time later, one of the local fishermen and his buddies who'd been in the pub came rushing down. He got into his 35-foot half-decker, and he came out to rescue us. That was fine. They threw us a line, and we made it fast, and they made the line on their boat, and the skipper went ahead. There's only one unfortunate thing. The other end of the line was in the water, and wrapped itself around the propeller. So there we were, two boats bouncing up against the rocks with just a little punt as a fender. And we wondered what on earth we were going to do now. And at that moment, a maroon went off, and we knew the lifeboat had been called. And a few minutes later, the lifeboat came round the corner of the harbour and nosed into us, bow first, threw us a line, or threw line to the half-decker, and they made it fast, and the lifeboat pulled us all out. And so that was two possible wrecked boats pulled away safely. And that was really quite good. And I must say the maroon was a fantastic thing, and it's a shame that they don't use it these days. It'd be a fantastic advertising for the lifeboats if they still use maroons. The second one was in 1998. I was on holidays with Sylvia down in Kerry, and we were in Valencia, and I had an opportunity to go on a trip round the Skellig Rocks. So I went on, and Sylvia said she'd stay a week behind, which was just as well in one part, because we headed out towards the Little Skellig, and we're going around the edge of it, and at the end, the southwest end of the Little Skelligs is a little bay, and the boat that we were on went into the little bay and was sitting in the middle of the bay, and the skipper was showing us various birds and seals and things that were there. the boat was rather close to the rocks. And I said, "Skipper, I think you're a bit close." He ran into the wheelhouse and slammed the boat into astern. Unfortunately, at that moment, the gear cable snapped, and instead of going astern, we went straight ahead, bouncing along the rocks, and this is what happened. As you see, the boat ran right up on the rocks. Now, we were very fortunate, just before it got to that position. No, why is that doing that? Just before it got to that position, the boat was moving back and forth, and we were all able to jump onto the rock, except for the skipper, who you see is still sitting there. Luckily, there was another boat outside us. I don't know what would have happened if there hadn't been, and it saw what happened and sent a message to the Coast Guards, I presume Valencia Radio, and we were told the lifeboat was coming to us. The lifeboat got to us in under an hour, and I reckon that was pretty good going. It's about 20 miles from where the lifeboat is to where we were. So an hour was pretty good going. So here they came in, I don't know why that's jumping. They had their little Y boat, they launched it, and they came in. And as you see there, the waves are down, but in the next one, you see the wave is up. So there was quite a rise and fall. The Y boat came in to us as the wave came in, and somebody from the rock jumped into the boat, and as the wave dropped, they dropped back out again, and they came in again and picked up another one, and then delivered those two people to the lifeboat, and repeated that until we were all off it. That's near the end. I think that guy in the green jacket is myself, and as you see, the skipper is now right up on the bow of the boat. So we all got off, but the skipper was a real problem for them, because they couldn't get in near there without damaging the Y boat. So what they did was, I had the life raft floating, and I kept it playing a fish, because I didn't want to open the life raft in case it got torn on the rocks. They were able to open it, as you see they've opened it there, and they drifted it in, or at least I think they threw a rope to the skipper, and he pulled it in, jumped into it with a lot of difficulty apparently. They had to cut the life raft, cover a canopy to get him into it, and then they towed him out. And so that's what happened to us, and there the lifeboat and the helicopter from Shannon arrived shortly afterwards, and I'm told that a naval vessel was just on its way to rescue us as well, so we had everybody around. And this is the boat, that the Trek class boat that John and Margaret do, which is still in service 26 years later, and I'm still here, thank goodness. So that's my lifeboat stories, and I don't really want a third one, but it's good. It's good knowing that they're there and will rescue us under any conditions.
This is payback time.
So, right. Okay, now we'll go back to the real story. John Richardson Wigham was a descendant of a family of lords of the manor and sheep farmers in Colnwood near Carlisle in the north of England. The family still live on the same land over 300 years later. His father moved to Edinburgh, where he was involved in manufacturing shawls. John was born in this house in Edinburgh in 1829, on the 15th of the first month, the son of John Tertius Wigham and Jane Wigham nee Richardson. They were a Quaker family. Now, the intriguing thing about John Tertius's name is that there are an awful lot of Johns in the Wigham family. And John Tertius worked with his cousin, who was called John Jr. Now, John Jr. was older than John Tertius. So I presume there was a John Sr. somewhere as well, but I haven't found him yet. So this is the birth certificate for John R. Wigham. When he was about a year old, his mother died, and his 13-year-old sister, Mary, took over the whole responsibility for the family, running of the family and the family household. Some years later, his father, John Tertius, had business in Dublin, and he took his 2 older daughters with him. They met Joshua Edmondson, who was a businessman in Dublin, and it led to the marriage of Mary to Joshua in 1840. They lived above Edmondson's business in Capel Street. John Edmondson's business was household goods, metal and tinware. The family in Edinburgh went through some bad times when the Scottish bank, which John Tertius was a shareholder in, collapsed. And as a result, John R. Wigham's education finished at 15, and he was apprenticed to his brother-in-law in Dublin. This is his apprentice indenture, and he was indentured for 6 years. Now, I'm sorry, this is a rather poor picture. It's the only one I could find. This is a picture of Edmondson's shop in Capel Street and their workshop behind the shop, the Capel Street shop. It was in a street that was called Stafford Street. It's now changed to something else. And this is what the shop looks like today. It's now McQuillan's, and you probably all have seen McQuillan's there. And this is a stanchion in the window of McQuillan's, which says J. Edmondson and Company, London and Dublin. Edmondson's business was expanding rapidly, and it had started manufacturing small gas retorts and equipment suitable for lighting large houses and institutions. They had a reputation for high-quality gas pipes and fittings using drawn tin rather than iron. It was said that because of the quality of the gas fittings in Dublin, gas was accepted and expanded in Dublin far faster than in London. In 1848, Joshua Edmondson died. He had been involved in Quaker famine relief work, and it appears that he contracted typhoid, one of the many diseases that were rife at the time. John R., though still an apprentice, became joint manager of the firm with his sister, and he also helped bring up the Edmondson children. The business continued to expand, and many large households in Ireland were fitted with Edmondson appliances. And in England, the Prince of Wales installed an Edmondson gas lighting system in his house. Here's a bit of a list, or part of a list of the gas works that were supplied. I don't know that you can read them all, but the first one there is Albert Model Farm, Glasnevin, 60 lights. All Hallows College, Drumcondra, 260 lights. Athlone Railway Station, 60 lights. Bagnallstown, County Carlow, 600 lights. Ballinasloe Railway Station, 40 lights. The Right Honourable Lord Viscount Bangor, Castle Ward, Strangford, 70 lights. And so on. So they were all over the place, particularly railway stations, I suppose, were one of the more important ones, and a lot of schools. This is John R. Wigham as a young man in 1855. He married Mary Pym, who was the daughter of Johnathan Pym, who was best known for his work as Joint Secretary of the Quaker Famine Relief Committee. And also Johnathan Pym was the person who started Pym's department store, which was in South Georgia Street. Some of you older people might remember it.
Santa Claus.
Yep, that was it. That's the place we went. In 1863, John R. successfully requested a grant for the development of a gas burner for use in lighthouses from the Dublin Ballast Office. And this is the Ballast Office before it was knocked down and rebuilt. And unfortunately, the picture I had of the Ballast Office with its clock ball on top was so poor I didn't put it in. But it was quite an important building. In 1865, after extensive tests, a 30-jet gas burner was installed in the Bailey Lighthouse. The gas was made on site using oil, and the lamp was 4 times stronger than the existing oil lamp, and was approved by the Board of Trade. This is a visit we made a while ago, and here's my brother and his family beside the base of the old gasometer, which is just a pond now at the back of the lighthouse. A number of visitors came and were very impressed with the light. The Scottish light engineers, the Stevenson brothers, came, and John Tyndall came. And John Tyndall is the Irish scientist who was scientific advisor to the Board of Trade and to Trinity House, the English Lighthouse Authority. And Tyndall was extremely impressed with it, and very impressed the first time he'd been to an Irish lighthouse, and he was very impressed with the efficient way that the lighthouse keepers ran the lighthouse. He thought it was as good, if not better, than any of the ones he'd seen in Britain. Here is some drawings of the burners that were used with valves and things. The left-hand one is a 28-jet burner. It just has one valve, and the right-hand one is a 108-jet burner, which would have had a number of valves, so the amount of light could be adjusted depending on the conditions. Here's a burner of a later design, which is in the museum at the Bailey. And here is close-ups of the burner. The center would have been the 28 jets, and then the valves around the edge could be switched on to increase it up to 108 jet burner. So making it a much more powerful light when conditions got bad. And this was something that ordinary oil lamps could not do. It took quite a lot to trim the oil lamps to get them to be brighter. This is John R. Wigham at a slightly later stage, and he married, as I said, he married Mary Quinn. And when they were married, they moved out to Monkstown, and they had this house, Albany House, which when first built, its gardens ran right down to the sea with a bridge underneath the railway. And you see there's a gantry there on top between the chimneys, and that was a gantry which was used for measuring and testing the lights that were on the Bailey. And this is what you would have seen on the other side, the Bailey light straight across the harbour. This is a drawing of the system for producing gas. There's two furnaces there to produce the gas, and then there's a filtering cleaning system, and then a gasometer. And this is the gas. Originally they used oil. I don't quite know how that was done, but later they used camel coal, which is a coal that has a lot of extra hydrogen in it. I don't understand it, even as a scientist, which meant that the gas was much more powerful for burning. The Bailey light was a fixed light. It didn't flash or anything of the sort. It was just fixed. And the next thing that happened was that John R. developed a mechanism for making lights flash. And the first one was put into Wicklow Head. This is a picture of Wicklow Head at the time, which is in the library, the Maritime Museum. And this is Wicklow Head today from the sea, and here it is from the shore, and the chimney from the gas plant is still in place. Now, what happened in Wicklow Head was that the gas was switched on and off. The gas was switched on and off by a clockwork mechanism, and so it was able to flash. It just continuously went on, off, and flashed. In the same year, gas was put on to the Rockabelle light, and this had a flashing burner, but also had a rotating lens system. And this was really the 19th century equivalent of GPS. A mariner was able to see the light and immediately identify it, and hence the ship's position. And that was really the first time actual identification, certain identification was possible. I think this one, it flashed, I can't even remember, I think it was about 6 times in about 16 seconds and then it was dark for the rest of the minute, and then it flashed again. Something like that. In 1872, Wigham lights were installed in Holyhead, and this is the Holyhead light, and also in Halesborough light in Norfolk, this light. And in 1873, Trinity House decided to run a comparative trial between oil lamps and Wigham's gas burner at Halesborough, because there were two lighthouses there. They were originally fixed lights, and the way of making them different from other lights was to have a second light somewhere close by, so you had two lights and you could identify where you were. The trial was supervised by James Douglas, the chief engineer of Trinity House. Neither Professor Tyndall or John R. were present. James Douglas's report said that gas was no better than a 4-wick lamp. On investigation afterwards, John R. found that the lighthouse keeper had been instructed to only turn the gas tap on a quarter turn. A retest showed that the gas light was better than oil. Despite this, in 1875, Douglas wrote a report criticizing gas, saying that almost all of the light from the gas burner was out of focus and wasted. This was proved to be false by Thomas Grubb, the famous Irish telescope manufacturer. And here's the infamous James Douglas. John R. then thought up a way of improving the strength of lights. He decided he could stack two gas burners on top of each other. And here's what was called a biform light, with two burners and two lenses, one on top of the other. He later did more, and these are triform lenses. The left-hand one is a fixed lens. The middle one is a flashing lens, and then the furthest one is a stepped flashing lens. I don't quite know what the reason for the stepped flashing lens was, but those two lenses were rotating ones. And they actually, at that stage, you can see they rotated on little roller bearings, unlike the lighthouses now who rotate on mercury. In 1872, one of the gas lights designed by John R. was fitted to the top of Big Ben to be used to call members of Parliament when a vote was taking place. And I suppose this was the forerunner of a pager. The parliamentary people could go out and sit in a cafe, and as long as somebody was keeping an eye on the light at the top of Big Ben, they could stay there as long as they liked. So, now, we continue on. In 1878, the lighthouse at Galleyhead in County Cork was put into service. This had a quadriform arrangement and composed of 108 jets in each burner, and the light was 13 feet high and 3 feet in diameter. This was a group flashing light, flashing 4 or 5 times over 16 seconds every minute. The lens system consisted, sorry, I should go on to the next one. This is Galleyhead. The lens system consisted of 32 lenses, and it had a maximum power of a million candle power. And at the time, that was the most powerful light in the world. And here's the present lighting lens system, a bi-form system. And here is on the outside plate of the lamp house, it says J. Edmondson's and Company, Engineers, London and Dublin. And here's a sketch of the plant at the back with 2 gasometers and living accommodation in front of it and the lighthouse. In 1879, the steamer Princess Alexandra with Professor Tyndall, William Douglas, an engineer from Trinity House and brother of James Douglas, Captain Cole, Inspector of Lights, and John R. Went to inspect the light from the sea. Intensive tests were carried out, and Professor Tyndall said it was the best light he had ever seen, and all seemed pleased with it. Later, William Douglas wrote a report criticising the light, probably because he and his brother favoured oil, and very probably professional jealousy. So that was kind of the beginning of things. This is a drawing of the lights, the 4 lights on top of each other and the lenses. And this is William Douglas. William Douglas is an interesting guy. He had a remarkable career. He started with Stephenson's and Company and then joined Trinity House, where he worked in Ceylon, and subsequently was appointed Chief Engineer to the Commissioner of Irish Lights. He had a very productive career, building and improving many of the lighthouses we still have today. The highlight being the design of the Fastnet Lighthouse, which he failed to see completed. He introduced new lightships and built the Bull Rock Lighthouse and New Island Lighthouse. It would be well worth somebody doing a bit of research into him, even if he didn't like gas. In 1878, James Douglas, to make sure that Douglases don't get mixed up, he was the chief engineer of Trinity House, designed and built a new lighthouse at Eddystone Rock, replacing the Smearton's lighthouse, which was being undermined by the sea, and that's the old lighthouse being taken down the other side. He decided to use a biform light system, contravening John R.'s patents for lens systems. And this is a drawing of his light. He used oil, and he claims that because he was using oil, the lens system patent was null and void. John R. offered Trinity House the use of the patent for £1 a year, and this was refused. The case was brought to the commercial courts, where in 1884 John R. Was awarded 2,500 sterling compensation, but all his patents were forfeited to the state. This was a substantial loss to him, and it meant that all the rights for gas lights and LED systems could be used by Trinity House free of charge. In 1885, Trinity House decided to run further trials between oil, gas and electricity. This was held at South Foreland, on the south bank of the River Thames. The specification was that the lights should be of a type currently available. You see that A was an electric one. I think it was probably a carbon arc one, but I don't know that. B was John R's gas one, and C was Trinity House's oil lamp. The first thing you might notice is that B, the gas lamp house, is smaller than the others. John R had provided an off-the-shelf system, whereas Trinity House had built larger than normal lamps. The oil lamp was a 6-wick lamp, whereas the standard was 4 wicks. John R was not invited to be part of the trial test committee. The reason being, he was a mere tradesman, and it would demean the gentleman of the committee if he was on it. While James Douglas, despite being the inventor of the other lights, A and C, was part of the committee. John Tyndall objected to this, saying that either both James Douglas and John R should be on the committee, or neither of them. This sparked an enormous row between Tyndall and the committee, and later on Joseph Chamberlain, the president of the Board of Trade. A new committee was formed of Trinity House members only, but including James Douglas, and leaving Tyndall out of it, even though he was their chief scientific officer. John R was refused access to the site during the trial. The reported results was that gas was poor, electric light was best in good weather, but poor in bad weather, and oil was best all round. After the tests were completed, John R. Gray gained access to the site and found that his lamp had been tampered with. Traces of white lead paste were found on the burner, just blocking the jets, and James Douglas had used the lamp house to test his own gas burner. The gas burner is now being out of patent. Suddenly, Douglas was interested in gas. The consequent dispute escalated and was conducted in Parliament, the House of Lords and the press. Here's a cartoon from Punch showing Chamberlain at the top with the suit on, and Tyndall with the beard, and a sailor in between. And here's one from a newspaper with the sailor sailing between the two lighthouses, Tyndall and Chamberlain. The upshot of all this was that Tyndall resigned his position with Trinity House, and also as Chief Scientific Officer of the Board of Trade. This left John R. with no support in the argument about gas and oil. In Ireland, a number of lighthouses were converted to gas. The Hookhead in 1871, New Island in 1884, Rathlin East in 1894, and sorry, I got the wrong way. There was Tory Island. Sorry, Tory Island was in 1887, and Rathlin was in 1894. Now, the New Island light was the last Wigham gas burner and was finally converted to oil in 1928. Both Tory Island and New Island had the biggest lens system in the world, being triform hyperradial lenses, designed by John R. Wigham and made in France by Fresnel. In 1928, the Tory Island lens was removed, rebuilt as a biform lens, and fitted to the new lighthouse. This lens can now be seen in the Titanic Centre in Belfast, and it really is incredibly big. Now, if you want to see it, you really need to go in the evening time, because in the daytime it has shutters around it to stop any sunlight burning it, because the lenses would focus the sunlight. There's one other unfortunate thing. If you're looking at the documentation all around the bottom of it, the photographs of John R. Wigham are incorrect. They took them from an incorrect picture on the internet. That picture has been corrected since, but they had printed all their stuff, and so there's some stranger instead of John R. Wigham there. Now, despite their objections to gas, once John R. Wigham's patents had been forfeited, both Douglas brothers used the technology to develop their own gas lights. William Douglas used it at Bull Rock and also at St. John's Point. And at the same time, Edmondson's company was removed from the list of companies that Trinity House would do business with. And as a result, quotations for several lights in Donegal were rejected. In 1889, John R. Wigham received this very brief note from the Marquess of Londonderry, who was Lord Lieutenant in Ireland at the time. And it reads, "Dear Mr. Wigham, I am very pleased to inform you that I have received an intimation from Her Majesty that she is greatly pleased to accede to my request for permission to confer on you the honour of knighthood. Faithfully, Londonderry." This is John R's reply, which was somewhat longer, but saying essentially, "I have always believed that the holding of the position of knighthood is not consistent with the principles of the Religious Society of Friends, of which I am a member, and in this my family concur." He was then asked some years later, but again refused in accordance with his principles. This is a letter from John Tyndall, who was at this stage not terribly well, and he was living in Switzerland. He wrote saying how disappointed he was with John R's decision. For many years, Edmondson's had been providing oil lamps for navigation buoys and beacons. The problem with these was that the wicks needed to be regularly trimmed and adjusted for the burners to work properly. John R. came up with a clever solution. This was to burn the wick on its side rather than its end. The wick was threaded over a roller. One end was dipped into the fuel oil, and the other end was attached to a float in a chamber of specially clean oil. The bottom of this chamber had a fine valve which allowed the oil to escape very slowly. The result was that fresh wick was continually being drawn into the lamp as the oil dropped. These lamps could be manufactured to run unattended for 31 days, 62 days, or 90 days. As you can see there, the roller at the top. And here is the setup on the top of the lamp with 3 rollers and 3 wicks, so that in every direction there would be an equal amount of light shining. Here is the light that is in the Maritime Museum, and here is a standard buoy light, a 31-day petroleum light, and here is an advert for the buoys, and also a beacon on the rock in the background. And here's an interesting one. This was a boat-shaped buoy which was used as Roche's Point in 1904. The other interesting thing about the buoys was the oil that was dripping slowly from the float tank could either be collected and used again, or it was allowed to dribble into the water to calm the sea around the buoy. And here is a buoy you can all see. It's the Moresby buoy in Dungarvan. The Moresby buoy was put in place above the wrecked Moresby ship, which wrecked in 1895. And that's a sad story, which is perhaps for another day. The little park there is called the Moresby Park. Here are some Wigham buoys being manufactured in the Stafford Works at the back of the Cable Street. Here's a pillar occulting buoy, and this was really a flashing buoy in that it had a little fan above the flame, and it rotated, and it brought around with it a little shutter that moved round the light, so it just continually flashed as this rotated. Here's a gantry type one, and here is a pierhead one being built in the Stafford Works. And here's a little bit of a list of where the boys went. They went all over the world, particularly successful in the Far East and the Pacific. They went to Canada and South America and Cork, had quite a number of them, and it was really amazing how many were built. In the Maritime Museum, here's the filing cabinet from Edmondson's, with lists of all the places that were supplied. Now, the documents from those filing cabinets are now in the National Archive. And here's you can't really see it terribly easily, but it's just a close-up of some of the filing. The first one is Timor, the next one was Portugal, the next one was Manchester and Manchester Ship Canal, Wanganui, New Zealand, and London. So in that little list, they're all over the place. With the discovery of carbide, which was used to manufacture acetylene, Wigham developed an acetylene flashing light. He also supplied acetylene generators to houses, replacing the more cumbersome coal plants. And with the development of electricity, for lighting, Edmonson started Edmonson's Electrical. This company was active in London and Dublin. Many houses which had been fitted with gas plants the plants were converted to generate electricity. And major projects included the electrification of ships. The ill-fated Leinster was wired by Edmonson's. And parts of London were lit by Edmonson's power stations. And some development work was done on carbon lamps for lighthouses. I haven't been able to follow up that. There was some kind of a tie-up with a guy from the Eastern Europe, which apparently wasn't successful. Other places had Wigham generators fitted. This is the generator that was put into the National Library. And this is the switchboard of the National Library. And this is one of the lights in the circular room in the National Library. What else? Oh yes, the business really expanded, and they started a shop in South Dublin. I'm not quite certain where it was, but I can find out. And this is the shop in South Dublin with lamps, furniture, carpets, coal scuttles. Virtually, the story was that once somebody had built their house and put a roof on it, Edmondson's could supply everything that was needed in the house. Plumbing, heating, lighting, furniture, cooking equipment, and plates and cutlery, you name it, a lot. This is an ad from their London office. As you see, it's gas fittings of all descriptions, chandeliers, lamps, etc. Hot and cold water, baths, latrines, laundries, electric and pneumatic bells, signal and telegraph speaking tubes for mansions, clubs, private houses, steamships and yachts. This is the reverse side of that little showing Big Ben with its light on top of it. So, what did a busy man like that do for his spare time? He was chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in the 1890s. He was an ardent liberal unionist, and believing that home rule would damage trade. And here he is at a meeting about home rule and unionism. He was an engineer with the Dublin tram company and a director of it, and he visited America. There's him in the bottom corner, reporting on visiting America to look at the latest tram and see what Dublin would need. He was also a director of the Alliance and Gas Company, and he was chairman of Blackrock Town Commissioners and designed their gas works and was involved in the development of their drainage system. And this is a barrow that he received when the drainage system was put in place. And I always wondered whether the outfall that used to be at the back of Dunleary Pier was his doing. Because it would have been about the right place. So in 1904, John R. Wigham took ill while delivering a lecture on gas and electricity in Belfast. He partially recovered, but he never worked again and died in 1906. Edmondson's company was closed in 1911. The lighthouse business was taken over by their manager, Barrett, and prospered, supplying Wigham oil lamps throughout the world. I have a rather nice leaflet from Barrett's, which is actually in French, and it shows all the places lighthouses and lights were put around the world, and they are virtually every place you can imagine. Barrett's went on to develop various electric light systems, and it will be well worth somebody researching Barrett's. Leslie Green, who was manager for many years, donated the records of the company to the National Archive. Barrett ceased trading in 1998 when the then owner, Diane Marr, became ill. Edmondson in London continued to trade under the management of John R.'s son, Cuthbert Wigham. It was eventually taken over by a larger electrical company. And until recently, I thought that was the end of it. But in fact, Edmondson's now is one of the big electrical equipment companies in Britain, with branches in numerous countries, including Ireland. This is really a very, very short look at my great-grandfather's life. There's very much further research to be done. As I say, there are 40 boxes in the National Library, the parliamentary papers of the period, the Irish Lights Archive, still to be researched. Unfortunately, I understand that much of the Trinity House archive was lost during the bombing in the Second World War. There's no doubt that the work of John R. Wigham was a catalyst for the rapid development of lighthouse technology in the 19th century, shaking up the lighthouse establishment. So that's the end of my talk, and I would very much like to acknowledge my late brother Billy, who gathered much of the material I have, and Thomas A. Tagg, the American lighthouse historian and researcher, who allowed me to use his booklet, Brilliance and Prejudice, the John R. Wigham story. Well worth looking at. It's online, and it has a lot more information than I've given you here. I'd like to thank the Commissioner of Lights for my visit to the Bailey and to Galley Head, and their website for pictures of the lighthouses I haven't seen, and their dates. The Maritime Museum for the photographs of Wigham equipment, and John Ollie, who provided the Thundercrest pictures. And finally, my friend Charlie Kavanagh, who has taken me sailing past many of the lighthouses in Ireland and supplied the pictures of the Wicklow lighthouse. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.